Okay, I'm Dale Gilmore with Quest, and we are here with an esteemed guest that I'm really excited to speak with today. As we always say, if we don't understand what our quest is, we need to either be trying to learn about ourselves more to achieve figuring that out, or maybe we already do know what that is, and maybe we're onto something. Here today, I have with me Chris Davis with Davidson Wealth Management. Chris is someone that I've known for a long time. I probably have known Chris for 20 years, maybe close to 20 years, which is interesting to say out loud. And I will tell you that there isn't interaction that I've ever had with him where I didn't leave thinking more about, ways to serve others and do better. And he's really been a wonderful influence in my life and somebody that I've been able to work and serve clients together with, and also to just experience his wisdom. So I appreciate him for who he is, what he is, and how he is. And I'm so thankful that he's here today. So we'll get started here. Chris, one of the things we always ask, really silly, simple question, not so silly, pun intended, given that's the name of our company, but we want to know, what's your quest? And some people have a long answer. Some people have a short answer. Some people have a, start of an answer, but, how would you answer that question today?
Dale, thank you for those kind words. Thank you so much. I hope I can measure up today. So when I think of a quest, I think of Don Quixote, Man of La Mancha, to right the unrightable wrong, fight the unwinnable fight, to reach the unreachable star. And it's a romantic notion, but it's about asking big questions in life. And so when you asked me to do this, I actually Googled, what's your quest? And of course, Monty Python comes up. But the humorous side, King Arthur answers a question with a question. So I would say my quest is to be curious and serve others, however that may be, and however it works out. I'm not sure there's a great destination in mind, but that is my quest.
So serving others is that's a common denominator between my business and your business and our personal lives as well. It's sort of kind of what gets us out of bed, I think, as humans. Being curious, there's two different lanes sometimes.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about, maybe big picture, how you've served others over your career. And I know there's a million different ways you have, but, maybe connect a couple dots for the audience on
Thank you.
a little bit about who you are, where you've been, and what service means to you today.
Yeah, I realize those two are not closely connected on the surface. In the 5th grade, my dad is helping me tie my tie for church. And he said, "Son, I think you'd make a good Methodist minister." It scared the heck out of me. And I ran from that calling all my life. But I've served the church and I've served people because my dad saw that I had a heart for serving others. I had a fascination with economics, business cycles, charts, graphs. So it became natural, I guess, for me to find my way into the financial planning industry, even before there was a financial planning industry, and to combine those two things in my career. And it worked, and it's worked for me to this day.
And then, speak a little bit about the curiosity side of that. Tell me,
Yeah.
where that comes from.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, but I heard a quote one time: life happens to the left of the decimal point. I mean, the more you analyze something, the further to the right of the decimal point you are, and the time spent on the calculations has diminishing returns. There's one of those economics phrases. But if you're curious about the human condition and you think about not just psychology, but sociology, anthropology, all the things of life, it all comes out of nowhere. And if you're aware and you pay attention, you just ask the questions other than just doing the calculations. Life is not linear. It's just not linear. And so for me, the curiosity is I want to find out, for example, Dale, what is in your life? What has happened in your life story that informs the opinion you have today on this particular subject? In other words, why is it so important that you retire at age 60, hypothetically? For some people, it's just a number. For other people, their dad died at 59. But if you didn't ask the question, tell me your earliest financial memory, or ask a question that gets them thinking, you may not get to the truth, their truth.
So as you explore all of these questions, that I'm sure some of them are commonly asked in different rooms, whether that's in business or with colleagues or serving a customer or maybe serving a family in church. How consistent are the answers that you receive back? And when you ask those kinds of questions to people, like what is something that continues to surprise you, even though you know you shouldn't be surprised?
That people don't think in terms of questions.
Yeah.
They think in terms of what do I need to do in the next 10 minutes?
Yeah. Got it. Well, so I'm going to kind of narrow us back into your professional life. I know that I think we've got the service and the curiosity lanes, but when you started out on your professional journey, when you started to do this, maybe it was the economist, curiosity that you had, what do you think, kept showing up for you over your life and career as you served your customers and as you developed your career? Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us a little bit about your career, maybe.
Oh, what kept showing up? Good question. Adam Grant wrote a book called Give and Take, and the subtitle was something to the effect that how you prosper in business by helping other people. And it's the complete antithesis of what you might read in MBA school with spreadsheets and the numbers and where to cut a quarter here and a nickel there. And I just continue to think that life, business, everything happens to the left of the decimal point. And if you really focus on other people, and I've seen that, whether they work with you as people in your profession or as clients, whatever the profession is, and you can really find out what it is they truly need, not what they want, but what they truly need, and you're patient and you're slow to deliver the solution, I think you have a better solution and a better relationship and better outcomes. I'm not being philosophical here, and I may dodge the question. I have no idea.
No, you're okay. It helps me figure out where you're going next here. So, I have the word impact, and obviously, we have our charity, Make an Impact Foundation, which isn't what we're here to talk about today, but that word impact, has a lot of meaning, and it can mean so many things to so many people. But, if you had to say, like, in just one sentence, sort of what impact mattered to you in any life situation, how would you want someone else to kind of feel as a result of being in and around and being part of the service that you give?
I've not always been good at making someone feel loved, but I have been good at helping other people think. And I've been told or heard that Chris Davis made me think, and I was better off because of it. They did not necessarily like it at the time, but I think that thinking is just so important. And to think, you have to ask questions. And I've been so blessed to have people who spoke truth into me, did not tell me what I wanted to hear, but they told me what I needed to hear. And I try to do that in love, and I hope we all can. And not easy.
Well, okay. I I I I know it's not easy, and I know love and truth they can both hurt, can't they?
Yeah.
So, turning the corner here, I just want to reconnect back to your career path. So tell us a little bit about earlier in your career, and you kind of already opened the gates to the curiosity around economics, but tell us, cross the bridge for me from that to your career.
Thank you, Dale. The career path journey may have seemed chaotic and without strategy or thought. I wanted to be a stockbroker, but I thought stockbrokers helped people. I did not realize you were there to sell a product. And so I got into that industry. The stock market had not gone up in 15 years in 1981. The peak in the market was 1966. So it looked like a terrible career choice. And when I got in it, I realized that there was a new profession starting up, and it was to be a certified financial planner. And I thought, now I can help people. And what I told people, my friends, anybody that would listen, is you're smarter than me, you're better at managing your money than me, but you're going to be successful one day. And as you get older, your kids are going to play t-ball, softball. You're going to have to take care of your parents. You're going to have promotions. You're going to manage people. There's going to be a Saturday morning where you do not have time to mow your yard. You're going to hire a yard person. When you do that, I want to be your financial yard person. I want to consolidate your IRAs and 401ks. I want to help you so that you can live a bigger, fuller life. And I'm a certified financial planner, so I have the skill to help you do that. At the end of the day, you're still in charge, but I'm your financial yard person. So it gave me a way to blend my desire to serve and also to do something technically competent as well. And I was wrong. My branch manager said no one wanted this, and he was right. So sometimes I think our good friend Dave Searfoss used the phrase, the bleeding edge of technology. I was on the bleeding edge of financial planning, one of the first 5,000 in America. So no one wanted it for a while. And, but I was ready when they did. And so I was in place to do that. But it was a time where not very many people believed in me and in what I was doing. And so I just had a very strong conviction that I was doing the right thing. I got lucky because the industry turned and people wanted it.
Tell me about the first time you experienced a place of, I need more people around me to serve my clients. Tell me about that.
Early on, I was advised that if I could grow my production within the firm, that I would get to buy stock in this company called Wheat First Securities, and that I could get additional help and resources. Well, I didn't see how I could get help and additional resources without getting the production up, but I couldn't get the production up without having help and additional resources. So it just seemed logical to me to go to my branch manager and ask, hey, let me pay for this person. And when I get to the production level, I know you'll pay for this person because that's your rules and your standards. Because I realized that we all have gifts, but I lacked organizational gifts. I like to say that I don't literally mean that I can see around corners, Dale, but I see things other people don't. I see things before other people. At the same time, I trip over sleeping dogs. And so the typical person who's linear, I'm asymmetrical, sees me bumbling around and go, this guy's a dolt. And they're right in what they see. So I realized I needed people to do the things I was not good at. I'm not good at execution, but I am good at thinking. I am good at engaging people in thought.
That's great. So now you're in a part of your career where now it's, more than just you.
Right.
Now you've got other people that are on your team that you also have to feel some level of responsibility for. Yeah. At what point did you feel, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Let me re-ask that question. So now you're in a situation where you've got clients that you have to care for. You've got your family at home, depending on where you are in that life cycle of your personal life. And then now you have other people on your team that are also, knowing you probably felt like part of your family. When did it sort of strike you that, wow, this is definitely bigger than myself?
I'm stubborn, so I got hit over the head a lot of times.
Yeah.
And that's humility. And if you don't get beaten down by humility, I know that's one of your questions later. You have to be beaten down multiple times along the way to know that you need help, because entrepreneurs have this rugged individualist mentality. They can do anything. To quote you in a podcast I watch, turning the crank. The guy's pretty good at turning the crank, but at some point, he's not good at turning the crank, or the business is more than the crank. And so knowing that there's other people that have skills and talents that can do things better than you is very, very important. And I love Arthur Brooks's book, From Strength to Strength, where he talks about fluid intelligence, your IQ, which peaks in your 30s and early 40s, and your crystallized intelligence, which grows throughout your lifetime. So today, at 70, I've abandoned most of the tasks of life that rely on the fluid intelligence, or the turning of the crank, the operating of the machinery. And I try to focus on the crystallized intelligence that grows throughout life. Some people call that wisdom, others context, but it's the ability to ask questions. So I used to have to know the answers. Today, I just need to know the questions.
That's great. That's great. So tell me what point, so you're, I've known you for 20 years. Somewhere in that story, you went from, now I've got a couple people, to I've got a bigger team. And you've had to make a couple choices along the way as you built and grew your team. From the outside looking in, I feel like you spent a lot of time making sure that your customers had access to resources inside the organization you were in when I met you. And, it also felt always to me like you were not part of a larger organization. You guys were a mini organization that had a larger organization to support you if you needed it.
Correct.
Which was sort of, that's always the feeling that I had about your firm. I don't think any of that was done, haphazardly. I feel like a lot of that was by design. So tell me maybe a little bit about the architecture of thought around those years as you formed that team, and how you added pieces that maybe you weren't the best at, or, your client was going to need, tell me about, some experiences in that journey.
So I got lucky. Remember, I said I was early in financial planning, early in team building, and did not have much money. So that self-imposed poverty allowed me to live simply, so that as the business grew, it wasn't a decision of giving up lifestyle to bring people on. It was, oh, what do we need next? If we're looking out 3 years from today, what has to happen for us to be satisfied with our progress? What does this look like in 10 years? If we're having this conversation May the 12th, 2035, what are we doing? What's it look like? How many people are in the room? And when you go from 100 households served to 300 households served, do you need more wealth managers or do you need more relationship managers? Do you need investment managers? So you can kind of see it coming if you just take the time to go off site, go alone, and ask yourself, but you have to have the data, have to look at it, and then you just say, what do we need next? For example, I knew I couldn't execute, so I needed administrative assistance. But then this is the fun part. The people you hire to solve a problem today have their own life ambitions. Those three administrative ladies went on to be excellent wealth managers. I didn't have a high ambition of breaking the glass ceiling for women. They did. And so they started hiring people to replace themselves. And so I think I have a lot of pride and joy in what they did, but the humility comes in that you have to give up your need to be right. You have to give up so much more. And as someone told me recently, Chris, you got to support your people even when you know they're wrong, because how else will they learn?
That's great. So I got another question, and then we'll come back to the script here a second. This quiz is a good question because it leads into a lot of the work that we both do, and is often challenging. When you have a customer that you meet, and if you were usually trying to set out to figure out what their goals are so that you can build a good financial plan for them, what are some strategies or methods that you use? Certainly, it's probably going to be asking questions. But what are some strategies or methods that you use when people don't have really good answers to what their goals are? Because it's often challenging in our business, and I know what we do, but give us, help the world understand maybe, how does Chris Davis sort of fish the goals out of people's heads or create goals that maybe they didn't have just to get some reaction? Tell me a little bit about your approach. I'm sure it's different for different people, but
Yeah, it's probably different industries. In the wealth management industry, we give them a snapshot for where they are today. And then there are variables that you plug in. How much are you saving? When do you think you might retire? When do you want to be financially independent? Just basic, simple, not philosophical questions. But once you give them an understanding of where they are, then the first response is, well, I need just a little bit more. Okay, but you got to start there. They have to see the tangible little bit more, and then they can see that, and then it's, okay, now what? You've got a little bit more. It takes a long, long time before you can ask the question, how much is enough? So the really deep questions you can ask on the first meeting, and you can ask 5 years later. But that in between, you are a practitioner just delivering a service that's not widely appreciated.
yeah, you may not get there in that first meeting, what I'm hearing.
I can ask questions that'll be more beneficial for the practitioner, such as what is your earliest financial memory? And then that'll answer a whole lot about what you do and do not talk about going forward. But that doesn't help them very much.
Sure.
Other than to hear their spouse or partner have a completely different answer that gets them talking and in alignment with themselves.
So here's a business owner question here. So as we're kind of evolving sort of through in and around your practice, you're serving, you also serve business owners as well as I do. Yeah. how can you tell uh, what are cues for you to pay attention to understand risk tolerance of your customer?
Risk tolerance. Everyone knows what it is, and everyone lies about it. They lie about it because they don't intentionally lie about it. They just don't know what it is. And it changes as you evolve. You would think that at 70 years old, as much as I know, as much as I have experienced, and as much as I would tell you how to manage your own money, when it comes to my own risk tolerance, I'm ashamed to talk about it on a radio show. I'm ashamed to talk about it to anyone else. So it changes, it evolves. And we've had lots of ways to measure it, but I do think it's important to ask the question and do it not in percentage terms, but in dollar terms.
Yeah.
If we lost $250,000 temporarily, or $500,000 or $1 million, whatever it is, temporarily, and intellectually I know we're going to get it back, are you going to fire me?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you fire me, I can't help you anymore.
Yeah.
So then that question makes everybody uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. On our side, I feel like we're constantly paying attention to the business owner that will just keep doubling down on his business. And so we were always trying to pay attention to then the liquid part of their net worth versus the total net worth, and trying to get our clients to see that their business is a portfolio asset and not just a job. And that's always tough. And because the younger business owners are typically higher risk taking. The older business owners sometimes don't always think about change soon enough. And maybe the risk tolerance perhaps has gotten less, but the way they've ran their business is similar to the way they started running their business, and they haven't changed. So there's always this couple inflection points in the life cycle of a business owner that I feel like is always, revolves around that risk tolerance word. Sometimes it's just awareness and understanding of your own net worth. And that's sort of step one for us. Similar to you guys, but more around the value of that business.
Yeah, we're in a retail business more than entrepreneurs really put all their money back in their business. So we don't see it. We see corporate execs, we see retirees. But I think Lloyd Reeb, who's with the Halftime organization, had a great insight when he asked the question of me, Chris, how much passive income do you have? Does your passive income meet your lifestyle? And I found out I did not have very much passive income. And when I realized and started rethinking whether it's a business or a portfolio asset, developing that passive income, I found that my risk tolerance changed and improved. And my view of my work improved. You can be far more altruistic when you're not relying on your human capital to produce the income that if you have capital introducing it. So I don't know if that's a concept that can help your folks or not.
Sure. So you have had business owners, though, that you've served.
Yes.
And a lot of times you don't really serve them until either they turn the corner mentally about making sure that they have personal wealth outside the business. Sometimes it takes some convincing from all of us, but once they've sort of turned the corner, how do you how many times have you felt like you've had to spend more time with them to get them to sort of change habits that they've created? I mean, tell me about whether they're growing too fast or trying to grow too fast, or they may already have enough, but they don't know it, or they're not aware of it. And how do you get them out of the the rat race of leading and running a business and continuing to build and grow when they're not getting joy? Like, how do you engage in the human side of
Oh,
as a
wow.
financial planner?
Dale, you've asked about 6 or 7 questions. I'm not sure.
Pick one.
I'm not sure I could even play back. I tell a story about me.
Yeah.
The month before COVID hit, I got pneumonia.
I do remember that month.
Yes. And I woke up from the first night of sleep I had, being heavily medicated, and I had a vision. I just started writing about what we're going into, what the period was going to look like. And when I finished writing, I realized that my career, my ability to be the smartest person in the room, I don't mean that as a compliment, but my ability to be the CEO of my own company was jeopardized by the fact that I'd not groomed Chris Sandusky properly. So I went to his house. I said, I'm sorry. We've made decisions 50-50, but I always had the last word. Today you have the last word. I hope you'll still consult me. Because I had to see how he would manage the business. And so I think that by telling the story, I can get the business owner to think a little bit about their own health, their own family, the life to the left of the decimal point that happens when you think you have everything figured out, the what ifs of life, and ask them what could possibly go wrong with where they are. And if it does, what is their backup plan? And it's not a fear-based thing as much as it is, this is my story of when I figured it out.
No. Sometimes prudence shows up in strange times, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess you talked about humility and you kind of just shared some of it just now. They ever say, you hear the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't always believe in labels and cliches. So, maybe tell me a little bit about that, and how that applies to how you think about serving clients. Or maybe give me an example where you felt like you were the old dog and learned a new trick.
Well, I admire Dave Zerfalls.
Yeah.
80 years old, and he still has a growth mentality. We work out together, and I admire the energy, the growth, and his desire to learn something new every day. So I believe we all can do that. I believe business owners can do that. Complacency comes only when we're not challenged or life hasn't challenged us. I'm not sure I'm answering the question at all. Maybe there's another question.
Fair enough. We'll leave it there. Your experience, you've touched a lot of people. Give me an example of, a positive moment in mentorship of others and a disappointing moment without all the detail.
That question's not in the script. A positive moment of mentoring someone and a painful moment.
Either one or the other.
Both moments are a single moment can be positive and painful, and generally is.
Yeah.
It's just your time duration for how you view it. This morning I was on a Zoom call at a foundation meeting, and a young man who had left our practice, who I'd poured my heart and soul into him, had left us. And I would say at the time, the terms were not very good. But I had encouraged the foundation director to ask this person to serve on the investment committee. And today I got to see him. And I was very proud of him and the questions he asked. And I knew I'd done the right thing. I still regret losing him, but I was still very proud of watching him.
That's great. That's a perfect answer. So, we in our business, we're focusing on, if somebody can't hit their goals and the math isn't quite there working, and they do own a business, and there's kind of two routes. Both of them matter. One route is, save some money personally as well, and don't just focus on building this business without taking care of your house. Sometimes that's in conflict for the business owner. Just put money aside because they feel like they could increase their margin or the throughput by investing this next $100,000 in the next thing. It's always a conflict. It's always a challenge. But part of our work is to get there. You also got to potentially, for us, we might telling them they have to chase a certain dollar amount of EBITDA to hit the number that their business needs to hit before they may sell it or transition it. And there's always this sort of, managing sort of the habits of the business owner and challenging, change, which our next question is really about change being constant and transformation being different than change. Tell me a little bit about, growing business owner that you're having this conversation with that still hasn't quite saved much personally. Maybe the spouse at home is, doesn't exactly know everything that's going on, but for sure she would prefer safety from your interviews and your questions. How do you engage that? How do you challenge that business owner to both continue to work on growing their business, but also not forgetting about taking care of their personal lives? That's a tough place. You and I both live in every day.
Yeah. I'm interpreting an MBA textbook question. For me, if you don't take care of your family, you're going to lose half your wealth. So the question is, do you want to lose half of your business or half of something else? You're going to lose. And the best way to win is to experience losing. That's where the humility comes in. So I try to, for myself, and if anybody will listen to me, to imagine what losing looks like. Because you generally can't have both. Something's got to give. And when you think about a business, let's just say, okay, let's assume this decision to double down and borrow another $5 million to expand the business works perfectly. What has that done for your marriage? What has it done for your relationship with your children? Is it going to require more from you for the next 3 years or less of you for the next 3 years? Because I had to admit to my wife that I'd had an affair, not with another woman, but with the business. I mean, it can be intoxicating to be a successful business person, or in my line of work, not to be successful, but have other people tell you how important you are to them and to get accolades. Those are the trappings of the world. And I love talking about Carl Jung. the ego and the soul. The ego's not bad. It gets us out of bed. It makes us think about growing our business and taking that $5 million loan to expand. We need that. That actually brings prosperity. That's part of capitalism. But then you have this thing called the soul. And if you don't have the soul, you don't have the compass. If you don't spend soul time, and I'm not advocating a certain religion or a certain faith, because Carl Jung was a psychologist, not a theologian, but it's two legs walking. And if you focus on one to the detriment of the other, you're going to pay a price, but they serve each other. And so my wake-up call was when I had pneumonia. You're going to have a wake-up call someday. Everybody is. You may have more than one. What are you going to do about the wake-up call? You're going to go back to normal, or are you going to say, okay, what if this $5 million loan doesn't work out? What does that do for my family? Envision 3 years from today, 10 years from today. Let's assume both worst case scenarios. Of course, I live in a world of statistics and standard deviation, so I know that you can have a 100-year flood 2 weeks apart. So the probability of your success is more random in the short term than most of us think it is. I think we have to be prepared for the randomness of life. That's why I love the quote, life happens to the left of the decimal point.
So we talked earlier before we got in this room, and you know, sometimes you can plan for change. Sometimes change just happens. And then there's this word transformation, which is maybe a form of change. Is there anyone maybe that you've experienced that's in business that you've seen from the outside looking in deal with change well, where you saw transformation in front of your eyes that, you've had an experience you'd like to share with us?
Right. So I looked up change and transformation before I came in, and change is what you do and transformation is what you become. I watched 3 ladies transform from administrative associates to developing the skills to provide financial advice and wisdom and bring their own life stories. That transformation did not happen quickly. At least 10 years, maybe 15. So transformation, I think, comes in little incremental steps. Very few people have that road to Damascus experience that transforms them. The rest of us, we stump our toe here, we stump the other toe there. Somebody holds the door open for us and stumps their own toe while they're doing it. All the little things of life. When your daughter gives you a hug and you're trying to judge the nature of the hug, what prompted it, what's changed in her, or is this transformation?
Love it. All right. So here we're going to dig back into your career. Tell me about a time in your career where there was change and it wasn't optional.
Yeah. I love the question. And I've sort of answered it before, but I'll just start over. Charles Schwab, the discount brokerage, started in 1973. Before brokerage commissions were regulated by government, they were set. So when I became a stockbroker in 1981, the commission ranged between 2 and 2.5%. And you could see that the commissions were going to come down and that a broker was just friction to the transaction. not really accreted. So I could see that change happening in the industry. And of course, I already had the desire to be a financial planner, but by focusing on what other people needed and not trying to sell them an idea, gave me the ability to step back and really explore what people needed. And that led to an asset-based fee model, which was not profitable for 5 or 6 years, but it was the right thing to do. And the only encouragement that I had was that inner soul that I was doing the right thing until it worked. And when it worked, then suddenly I was trotted up on stage to explain to people how to do it and what the price they were going to pay was. But you never really know if you're doing the right thing. But I had good people around me. And I love the quote, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, take others with you, an African proverb. And I love the title of Jody Seymour's book, Lost But Making Excellent Time. I think most of us are rushing so hard to go fast that we don't know where we're going. And we have to be willing to step back and suffer. There's that humility word again. Suffering builds the humility and the wisdom for what you need. So in that particular case, there was no genius on my part. It was just the recognition that I could be the person I wanted to be. I would pay a short-term financial price in hope, no guarantee, in hope that I'd be able to provide for my family.
And at the same time, align your goals with your customers' goals, which was the intention of the model.
100%. You're to my favorite word, fiduciary. The Department of Labor now has a definition for the word fiduciary. I'll define it for you in a sentence. Putting the interest of your client ahead of your own. And I would say in life, Dale Gilmore, you're a fiduciary for your team, for your clients, and your family. That's another fancy word for serving others.
Little leadership thread in there. And that's the part that makes all this worth it, and makes the honor and the care and the commitment, worth the pain and suffering that you described a minute ago. Any leadership moments when times are tough and working on trying to get the team aligned when, maybe a market dipped, or, anything that can kind of share with us that.
Yeah. I'll tell a story. It just came to me because as you were talking, I was saying there's a difference between management and leadership, and we confuse those all the time. This is one of the darkest days of October 2008. You may recall that the market was waterfalling down 5 to 8% a day. And I went to Robbie and I said, I need our checkbook. I need the home equity line of credit checkbook. She said, why? I said, I need to write a check for $200,000 and deposit it into an account at work. Why? People need hope that we're going to be able to keep the doors open. She said, what about us? She was right. This is why you listen to your spouse. She said, why don't you just fire somebody? I said, I will, but right now we need everybody. And those people need to be focused not on their own survival, but on the survival of the clients. And I'm not going to tell you those were good times. In fact, 10:30 one night after I was getting beat up really bad, my last beat up phone call, I called Robbie. I said, I'm coming home. She says, okay, baby, is there anything I can do for you? I said, yes, take the bullets out of the 38. That was my dark humor. I grew up in a house of dark humor. We didn't say we'd cross this bridge when we get to it. We'd say we'd burn it when we get to it. So 6 weeks later, I'm helping with laundry. I'm going, what are these bullets doing in your sock drawer, Robbie? Well, you told me to take them out. Take them out of the 38. So, but I remember holding that check up for $200,000 and saying, there's more where this comes from. And I lied. There's more where this comes from. We're going to stay in business. Please focus on the clients and please take notes for everything they tell you, because one day they're going to forget what they're saying and you're going to have to read it back to them. Now, that was management. First was leadership. We're going to be okay. Second is, what do you need to do? And they did it. And 2 and 3 years later, clients were coming back to us with some absurd things. I'd say, where are the notes? They'd read the notes. I'd print them. I'd walk into the client meeting. I don't know what happened, but this is what someone who took notes that day said. Do you have your notes? Well, that's kind of vaguely familiar. So I will never forget that time. I have lots of bear market stories, but that was the one that for the first time in my life, I actually thought we could have more than a great recession. We could have a great depression.
Leadership doesn't always have victories.
No.
So thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think the other part, as you kind of explore, where you've been, all the hard work you put in your career, kind of where you're at today, you're this person that's, got all of these wonderful life experiences that the industry has access to, team has access to, the community has access to. And, I'm thankful that you're here today speaking with us. So what's today and what's next?
You asked me that question outside. I did not have an answer. I don't know, but I'm very curious to find out. And I've engaged 2 different coaches. They speak different languages. That's part of my intellect wanting to stay engaged. I don't know what's going to surface, but I want to be prepared for it. And so I'm in an active preparation and prayer, and something's going to happen. And I don't need to know what that is.
So what, done a lot of things in your career. Word legacy is always a little squishy word. Some people it's a statue. So other people it's a not important. Other people it's a, but the reality is you were here and there's evidence you were here and you still are here. There's evidence you still are here. So, what's a mark that matters? What's legacy mean to you in your words, not everybody else's?
Thought a lot about that. And there's a lot of writing you could do and thinking. Legacy's not money. It's not financial to me. My dad is still in my head. My mom is still in my head. Their legacy is the fact that I remember them. I had a dear friend who was 4 years older than me. We met in college, the strangest thing. He became my mentor. Hank Federal. His voice is in my head all the time. And so his legacy is how he's imprinted me, and that the very best of me has come out because of his words. Not the best of me from what I've done, but from Hank.
So perhaps you're a bridge to continue other legacies through your legacy, if I'm listening, because all those voices in your head are informing you today and how you serve and person you are. So
I would love for my grandkids to see this in 20 years after I'm gone.
Well, so the purpose of our existence today is kind of determine what our clients' quests are, and that's I appreciate you sharing your life experience and your quest with us. I love the curiosity. To me, that's the piece that keeps you going. And then, as long as you stay curious and you keep working hard at the things that are serving your heart and other people's hearts, you're in the right spot. So, uh, as we wrap this up, um, is there, if you could speak to any random business owner out here in the world that doesn't quite know where to start on to figure out, what does this all mean now? I've accumulated these assets, or I've done this or that. What's one insight that, if they acted on today, that might be something that you'd love for somebody to grab or hear, and act on?
Go back and look at, I think it's James Grant's book, Good to Great. No, Jim Collins, Good to Great. And the 10 companies that he featured, 3 are bankrupt today.
Yep.
Circuit City had great curiosity. They were criticized for starting, they did the big box stores for the young folks watching this. They were criticized for starting CarMax. Circuit City went away. CarMax survives today. So to a business owner, I would say, stay grounded, stay curious. The business you're building today, there's a very, very high probability that it will not last 20 years after you're gone. Are you okay with that? Because this business you're building is not your legacy. Circuit City at one point was the best stock on the New York Stock Exchange for 15 years, and it doesn't exist anymore. You're not going to exist anymore. What really, truly matters? What did you do for the people in your business? What are your customers and clients going to remember you for? What's your family going to remember you for? Historians and people that study the stock market will tell you, will show you that the top 50 companies in the United States 25 years ago are not the top 50 companies today. In fact, a lot of them are not in business anymore. So enjoy what you're doing. Live with purpose. Live with life. Love, forgive. Do all the things that you learned in Sunday school. It'll be okay.
So that's a great way to end. Chris Davis, I want to thank you one more time. Keep leading, keep serving, keep being curious, and keep sharing your wisdom with us, because you don't know who's listening and you don't know who needs to hear it. And thankful for what you've done in this community and the folks you've served, and thankful that you're my friend and teammate in life. So
it's an honor and a privilege.